And I envisioned a workplace, a virtual workplace, that gives me freedom of where I want to live and gives me flexibility of when I want to work. The CEO, the leader, the top leader of the organization have to be the best remote worker in the company. Don't expect that you're going to be a fully remote company operating perfectly from day one. As a manager, you have to assume best intent. So you have to default to trust. You can be successful no matter where you are.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Devico Breakfast Bar. Here we speak with different people involved in the business landscape, share their expertise, delve into the latest tech trends, and explore the ins and outs of IT outsourcing. I'm Oleg Sadikov, and today I'm excited to have Tony Jamous, CEO and co-founder at Oyster, the global employment platform. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. Hi Tony, and thanks for joining me today.
Hey Oleg, hello everybody, and thank you for having me.
Let's start our podcast with a little blitz. I start a sentence and you continue. Entrepreneurship gave me
an understanding of why I do what I do.
Entrepreneurship deprived me
Having enough time for myself.
My main superpower is
The ability to envision the future and convince people to follow me.
My main weakness is
Diving into the details.
When I'm afraid,
I tend to look inside and see why.
Sounds good. So what sparked your passion for remote work and distributed teams?
When I exited my first business, I took some time off and I realized that if I want to work again, it has to be on my own terms. And that was in mid-2019, before the pandemic. And I envisioned a workplace, a virtual workplace, that gives me freedom of where I want to live and gives me flexibility of when I want to work, to be able to spend time for myself, be able to be there for my children when I needed to. And in my previous business, we hired people in 45 countries, and I was able to witness the power of global hiring and remote work. I wanted to replicate that, but I wanted to do it at scale. I wanted to build a fully distributed remote company that not only gives me this freedom and flexibility, but also bring people together from all over the world and create massive amount of diversity. That's what created my passion for remote work and global hiring.
What pivotal moments or decisions led you to co-found Oyster?
Yeah, that was a key pivotal moment. When I left my business, my first business, took a year and a half off. And during that year and a half, I was really looking at, okay, what is the next thing I'm going to do? I had an amazing business plan. I had an investor ready to go about business that was related to my previous venture in the API communication space. But then also I took this time to focus on my well-being, on improving how I relate to the world and myself, to improve my mental health. And I was in a retreat with my therapist for a few days, looking inside on about my purpose. And it became clear to me the next day when we finished the retreat that I wanted to build Oyster and drop this other idea, because what I felt was that I wanted to be purposeful driven. And what I realized is that I don't wanted people like me. I'm originally from Lebanon, and I had to immigrate in my teen years to France. I was essentially forced to leave my home country and my tribe and my community. I didn't want the people like me to go through the same challenges and feel the same pain I felt when I left my community. So I wanted to be driven by the heart. And that's what drove me to the next day I went and set up Oyster, because I knew that this is aligned with my purpose. And that was in November 2019.
2023 All Labs report found that 68% of global workers would prefer a hybrid or fully remote work model. What are some other current employment trends that businesses should be aware of?
Yeah, one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in our business is really the shift of global employment towards emerging economies. We have seen that percentage of team member employed on the Oyster platform in emerging economies grew from 30% to 40% in the last 2 years, driven by the need of companies in the West, not only to find talent shortage remains the number one challenge for recruiters, but also to reduce their headcount costs and become more efficient. CFOs more than ever wants to control and reduce their headcount costs, which is great news. We just announced our impact report for last year. We've seen the amount of money we send into emerging economies. We call them FDI, foreign direct investments, in the form of salary and taxes, grew at 80% and exceeded $100 million, growing faster of the rest of our business, which is great news for the world, because the number one reason why emerging economies remain emerging is because they are losing their best talent to the West, and that talent merely sent back home 5% of their income. But if they stay back in their home countries in the community and they receive 100% of their income back home, and usually it is higher pay than local salaries, then you get a chance to make emerging economies stop being emerging economies.
How has the rise of remote work influenced the demand of employee record services?
The employer of record service, so to tell the audience what it is essentially, if you're a company in country X and you want to hire somebody in country Y, then you have two choices. You can either go hire expensive lawyers in country X and find local benefits, find local payroll providers, hire HR professionals locally to be able to employ somebody compliantly in the country, or you can use an employer of record service that enable you to do so without all of this complexity. Essentially, they will act as a legal employer of that person in the country that would pay their salaries, that would give them benefits. That employer of record market existed for 50 years. It's not new. But what's new with Oyster is that we use software to scale that. What was a manual process now is done with few seconds online, which increases efficiency, the speed, and give better employee experience. Before the pandemic, because this employer of record service was very expensive, sometimes 20% of the salary it would cost, it was restricted to only large companies, multinational corporation, and it was restricted to the use case of, I want to test a market. Let's say I'm Shell, I'm a big oil and gas company, I want to test the Nigerian market for 6 months to a year. I would use some of these legacy professional service-oriented employer of record services, and I would hire somebody who would pay a fortune for 6 months, and after that I would see if I set up my office. Now what happened is, post-pandemic, is that there was a wake-up call within hiring managers, especially in sectors where talent shortage is acute. Technology is a great example. They realized actually that they don't need anymore to hire people within 20-mile radius from their office. Anyway, people are not coming to the office anymore. So they start expanding. So the use case have shifted from large enterprise, testing a market, to smaller enterprise, talent acquisition use case. So it became a much bigger market. It multiplied the size of the market at least by 10 times. And that was a launchpad for the modern employer of record software-driven service providers like Oyster, because suddenly now you can hire people fast and you can pay much cheaper because software has dramatically reduced the unit economics for them when it comes to their cost structure. And it opened up this whole new category of global HR that is, I believe we are still at the beginning of it. Because now what happens is that there's no borders anymore when it comes to employment.
Are there specific regions or countries that you find particularly promising for tech talent?
We are a great representation of the supply-demand dynamic of tech talent in the world. We call them knowledge workers. In our business, we see that West remain a dominant position there, so North America, Europe, because here you have very high concentration of knowledge workers. But we see some emerging economies that are growing fast. So India is in our top 10 countries. Argentina, Brazil, Mexico are growing fast. We see South Africa coming on the map. Places in Eastern Europe growing rapidly. So,
for example,
we have Romania is a great hub for great software talent, as a good example. But there's a long tail of countries there. Great talent can be found anywhere. It's really the question of the environment that they are in. We have 300 million people that live in Nigeria. Increasingly, a lot of them are coming into the workforce as knowledge workers. Actually, we are predicting 1 billion knowledge workers entering the workforce in the next 10 years, mostly from emerging economies. So now, as hiring somebody on the other side of the world is as easily as hiring locally, then the best talent can be found anywhere. The world is your oyster when you're looking for talent.
How to build a strong company culture in a fully distributed team?
We got voted last year as one of the top 25 companies to work for by Glassdoor and Battery Ventures. And the reason why we have such a unique culture, number one, is that we intentionally build trust. Why this is important in a remote setting? Because when you used to commute to the office, you used to see people in seats. And we inherited our managerial practices from the Industrial Revolution, from factories, where you have to see people in seats to know that they are productive. Now you don't see people anymore. They are working from home. As a manager, you have to assume best intent. You have to create this environment where people feel safe. So you have to default to trust. Secondly is you have to be intentional about how you work together. You won't let it for chance how meetings are done. You have to be prescriptive of this is how you do meeting. You're preparing in advance, asynchronous documentation 48 hours in advance. I expect you to engage in that documentation, and then there's a clear objective for the meeting so you can minimize the amount of live synchronous meeting, and most of the work can be done asynchronously. And then thirdly, you have to be clear about what success looks like on the individual level, on the team level, and on the company level. Because when your employee wakes up in the morning in Manila and their manager is on the other side of the world, they have to know what is expected from them. So we use a method called objective key results that connects individual goals with team goals and company goals. And this is how we create clarity about what we expect from people and what success looks like for them.
Does it mean that every contractor employee has OKRs?
As much as possible, right? It's not going to work like this from day one. It's a journey, right? Every quarter, you improve the way you run your objective key results and infuse it deeper and deeper in the company. Like you have to have an OKR infrastructure more mature than your size if you're a distributed company, because you want to give people clarity of what you expect from them every week, every month, and every quarter.
What strategies do you recommend for maintaining high levels of employee engagement and productivity in remote setting?
So to maintain a high level of productivity, you have to have this operating system. You have to design purposefully how you work together. We call them the tools and the rules at Oyster. This is what you use Slack for. This is what you use Zoom for. When you use Google documentation versus using Notion to store long-form documentation. And you have to train people on that operating system. It's not enough to just put it out there. You have to keep training people on it and reinforce that behavior so people can adopt your operating system. And when it comes to engagement, it's a multifaceted variable and depends on the company situation and the context you're operating in. But what I found mostly impactful is you want to care about how people feel working with you here in this company. So what does it mean? First, you have yourself as a leader. You have to increase your level of sensitivity to how people are feeling working with you. You want to default to transparency. You don't want to make them feel that you're hiding something from them. And you want to create an environment that both push people to grow, dare people to do more and develop, and at the same time create a nurturing, caring environment. Because people, they want to grow. They want to have new growth opportunities. They want to succeed. They want to win. When I make people feel that they can win here by growing and developing, and at the same time, you have to keep checking in with them and making sure that they are feeling cared for as they are faced with the challenges. There's one quote I'd like to say is, in high growth technology businesses, challenges are inevitable, but burnout is optional. And to be able to make that happen, you have to dare people to take these challenges, and you have to care for people so that they don't burn out.
Interesting, because more than half of American workers say that they experienced burnout in 2023, and 3/4 of respondents reported at least a moderate level of stress. What are some practical tips for companies looking to transition or to optimize their remote work practices?
One of the recommendations is that don't expect that you're going to be a fully remote company operating perfectly from day one. So you have to have a roadmap through different phases of change you want to implement in your company. Secondly, it has to come from the top. The highest you go in the organization, the higher you need to have the commitment to working remotely effectively together. Going up to the very top, the CEO, the leader, the top leader of the organization have to be the best remote worker in the company. And thirdly is you have to reinforce these behaviors so that people know that this is what is expected from them. So in our case, when I notice somebody that have adopted well our operating system, we have sent 48 hours in advance, document for the meeting, and they have invited people to engage in it, I would give them a shout out publicly, say, well done. If they don't, I go privately and I give them feedback. And you have to constantly do that to be able to reinforce the behavior and create that culture of high productivity and combined with flexibility and freedom. Because it's not only great for the people, it's great for the leaders as well. It enables you to live where you want to live and work when you can work. You can be successful no matter where you are.
Let's talk about choosing the right partner. What factors should companies consider when selecting, let's say, an employee on record partner?
Yeah, great question, Oleg. We measure that actually on every customer interaction. We call them the buyer purchasing criteria. And we've been measuring them 4 years now. And I'm very excited to tell you the data. And to do that, let's take an example of a company that want to hire 50 engineers across 20 different countries. They want to adopt a global hiring strategy. The first thing that really care about foundational is a broad and a deep coverage. Why? Because the world is their oyster. They want to be able to hire the best talent no matter where they are. Even if they are in Cape Verde, the smallest African country with less than 500,000 people, they should be able to hire them. They need that infrastructure, that employment infrastructure, to also be deep with support of great local benefits to be an attractive employer. Maybe they want to give them equity. Maybe they want to help them with visas and migration. That's what we mean by having a broad and a deep employment infrastructure. The next thing they care about is bulletproof compliance. Because the reason why they're coming to use an employer of record is because they want to protect their financial risk. They want to protect their IP, intellectual property. So unless they can hire them contractor if they don't want to be compliant. So they come to you because they want compliance. So you need to have a bulletproof compliance. And then software becomes critical. You want the software application to be fast, to be self-serve, to be great user experience. You don't want to spend 10 days by email exchanging to generate a contract. As an example, at Oyster, our employment contract are generated within seconds. You don't have to talk to us. And then service becomes important. We're talking about people here. This is not a pure SaaS software, although there's mostly SaaS, but there's, at the end of the day, there's a people component. You want to provide a great employee experience for your people. It's your reputation as a company at risk. So service becomes important. And on the very end, the most important things we measured is intelligence. They want your platform to tell them in real time everything they need to know about compliance, about employment regulation, about payroll regulation in all of these countries they want to hire in.
Tony, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for your insights and expertise. Your voice is very important for the auditory. You're definitely an expert in this industry, in this area. Thanks for finding time and having a nice conversation with me today.
Thank you, Oleg.
If you enjoy our discussion and want to stay updated on future episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you will not miss out on the latest insights and conversations from the Devico Breakfast Bar. See you in the next episode.